I am Sergeant First Class Claire Mercer. I was 34 years old when I found out that the man I had married, the man I had wired money to from a desert 6,000 miles away, the man who had cried at our wedding like the world depended on it, had been living a second life. Not a secret hobby. Not a hidden drinking problem. A second woman. A second apartment. A joint savings account in both their names, funded by my combat pay. I remember standing in the kitchen of the house I had never actually lived in. The house I had bought while deployed. It smelled like another woman's shampoo and 7 months of lies baked into the walls. My deployment bag was still on the porch. I had not even unpacked. I had come home 2 days early to surprise him. I was the one who got surprised. His name was Marcus Mercer. And by the time I was done with him, that name would cost him everything he thought he owned. Welcome to Noble Revenge. This is the place where silence ends and lines are drawn in permanent ink. If this is your first time here, drop a comment and hit that subscribe button. Because what I am about to tell you is not just a story. It is a field manual for anyone who has ever been betrayed by the one person who swore to protect them. Let's get into it. There are two kinds of people in this world. People who are built by pressure, and people who are destroyed by it. Marcus Devlin Mercer was the second kind. I met him at a friend's barbecue in Savannah, Georgia, the summer I came back from my first deployment. He was tall, well-dressed, with a smile that looked like it had been professionally installed. He sold commercial real estate and spoke in numbers the way I spoke in coordinates. Confident, fluent, convincing. He was charming in the way that only people who have practiced being charming can be. I should have recognized the performance. I had been trained to spot a rehearsed response from 50 yards. But I was 27, I was tired from the desert, and I was hungry for something soft. Something that smelled like cologne instead of diesel exhaust. Marcus smelled like cedar and ambition. He called the next day. He showed up with flowers the day after that. He told me I was the most focused woman he had ever met. He told me he admired my discipline. He told me that watching me move through the world made him want to be a better man. I believed him. That was my first tactical error. We dated for 14 months. He proposed at dinner at a restaurant on River Street. He cried when I said yes. Real tears. Big ones. I remember thinking this man feels things deeply. He is the opposite of the cold calculation I live inside every day. Opposites attract. Opposites also detonate. We were married in October. A small ceremony. My commanding officer attended. My mother flew in from Memphis. Marcus's family filled 3 rows. A loud, big-shouldered clan who laughed too hard at their own jokes and refilled their glasses before they were empty. 3 months after the wedding, I received deployment orders. Fort Bragg to Djibouti, East Africa. A Joint Forces Logistics Command attached to a counterterrorism advisory unit. I would be gone for 7 to 9 months, possibly longer. Marcus held me at the airport like I was the last solid thing in the world. I'll be here, he said. I'll have the house ready when you come back. He kissed my forehead. He watched me go through the gate. He was already texting her before I hit the tarmac. I want you to understand what it means to be deployed. You do not get to be a person. You get to be a function, a rank, a set of duties that begin before the sun and end after it. There is no space in your brain for jealousy. There is no bandwidth for suspicion. You are operating on 4 hours of sleep, field rations, and the kind of focus that only comes when the alternative is catastrophic failure. I trusted Marcus because I had no capacity not to. I wired money every month. My base pay, my housing allowance, my hazard pay. Every dollar I earned counted the seconds between myself, and a mortar round went into a joint account he managed. We had agreed he would handle the household, the savings, the bills. I would handle the mission. When I came home, we would build something together. That was the plan. The plan was a fiction. While I was briefing officers at 0400 and 105-degree heat, Marcus was using my hazard pay to furnish a second apartment on the other side of Savannah. Her name was Justine. She worked at his brokerage firm. She was 29 years old, had long fingernails and a soft voice, and she knew exactly who she was lying next to. She was not a naive woman who had been deceived. She knew he was married. She had met me once at a company holiday party before my deployment. She had shaken my hand, looked me in the eye, and said it was a pleasure to meet me. Then she went home with my husband 6 weeks later. I did not know any of this when my boots hit the porch. I did not know it when I turned the key. I did not know it when I stepped through the front door and stood in the foyer of a house that smelled like lavender detergent and a perfume I did not own. I knew it 3 seconds later. A woman's cardigan was draped over the back of the kitchen chair. It was powder blue. It was not mine. I have never owned anything powder blue in my life. I stood in the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the microwave blinked 12 o'clock, because someone had never bothered to set it. I set my deployment bag down on the floor. I did not call Marcus. I did not text him. I am a soldier. I do not fire a shot before I have done reconnaissance. I started moving through the house. The bedroom was first. The sheets were new. I had bought plain white ones before I left. These were gray, expensive, with a high thread count that had the specific shine of something recently purchased for another person's comfort. On the nightstand, a phone charger that was not Marcus's brand. On the bathroom shelf, a second toothbrush. A moisturizer I had never seen. A razor designed for a woman's legs. I opened the closet. My side was exactly as I had left it. Uniforms. Dress clothes. Boxes I had not had time to unpack before deployment. Untouched. His side was restructured. Half his things were gone. Not stolen. Relocated. The hangers were evenly spaced on his side, as if someone had reorganized for more room. As if someone needed space. I did not feel rage. Not yet. I felt the same thing I feel when I see an unmarked road on a tactical map. I felt the sharp, cold focus of a person who has just identified the terrain. I walked to the kitchen. I opened the laptop Marcus left on the counter. He had never been careful with passwords. He thought I trusted him. I did trust him. That was the problem. His email was open. I did not go looking for the wound. I found it immediately. It was sitting there like an undetonated device in the center of a field. An email chain between Marcus and Justine. 214 messages. The most recent one, sent at 6:17 that morning, read, "She's back tomorrow. I'll figure out the logistics." Figure out the logistics. My job title, used as a cover strategy for hiding his girlfriend. I read 14 months of emails in 40 minutes. I did not skip a single one. By the time I finished, I had a complete picture. The second apartment he had been paying $1,800 a month from our joint account, listed in the statements as property management consulting fees. The weekend trips he had texted me about, marketing conferences, client dinners. He had taken her to Charleston, to Hilton Head, to New Orleans. He had charged the hotels to a credit card I was listed on as a secondary holder. Meals. Jewelry. A weekend spa reservation in Asheville. My combat pay, translated into another woman's birthday weekend. I closed the laptop. I picked up my deployment bag from the foyer. I walked back out the front door. I did not slam it. I let the latch click shut behind me with the quiet precision of a trigger being set. Before we go further, I need to stop for 1 second. If you have ever come home from something hard, a deployment, a long shift, a sacrifice you made for someone who did not deserve it, and found out that the person you trusted used that absence against you, I want you to hit the like button right now. Not for me, for you. So you know you are not alone in this room. Type the word deployed in the comments if you have ever given everything to someone who gave nothing back. And if you are new here, subscribe right now. Because the next part of this story is where I stop being the victim and start being the commanding officer. I drove to a motel 12 minutes from the house. Not a nice one. A functional one. It smelled like industrial carpet cleaner, and the ghosts of 100 other people's hard nights. The curtains were heavy and brown and blocked the streetlights completely. It was the perfect operations base. I sat on the edge of the bed. My deployment bag was on the floor. I did not unzip it. I did not change clothes. I sat in my uniform in the dark and I made a list. The list was not of things I wanted to say to Marcus. It was not a list of things I wanted to throw at him or doors I wanted to kick in. It was a legal inventory, joint account transactions, combined property records, credit card statements, the lease on the second apartment I now knew existed, the marriage certificate, my military pay stub showing every dollar deposited into the account he controlled. In the military, you learn something essential about warfare that most people misunderstand. The battle is not won at the moment of confrontation. It is won in the weeks before anyone fires a single shot. It is won in the planning, in the evidence, in the documentation. Marcus thought I was coming home from Africa exhausted and grateful, and ready to slide back into the life he had staged for me. He was correct about the exhausted part. He was catastrophically wrong about everything else. I called my friend Dana at 0900 the next morning. Dana was a JAG attorney, Judge Advocate General, and she had a voice like stainless steel and a record that made defense lawyers nervous. "Tell me everything," she said. I told her everything. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said 4 words. "He made it easy." Marcus came home at 6:30 p.m. I know this because I was sitting in the kitchen when he walked in. He stopped in the doorway. His briefcase slipped an inch in his hand. The color in his face did something interesting. It went pale and then immediately flushed, the way a system overloads before it shuts down. "Claire," he said. You're early." "By 2 days," I said. My voice was even. I had spent 20 years learning how to sound calm in rooms that were actively on fire. I did not stand up. I did not raise my voice. I placed my hands flat on the kitchen table, palms down, and I looked at him the way I look at a report that contains a critical error. "Sit down, Marcus." He sat. I slid a printed bank statement across the table. It was 4 pages long. I had highlighted 23 transactions in yellow. "Property management consulting fees," I said. $1,800 a month for 14 months. "Walk me through the property you were managing." His mouth opened. No sound came out. He was used to charming his way through difficult conversations. He was used to the power of his own voice, the warmth of his own smile, the leverage of the tears he could produce on demand. I had removed all of that leverage. I was not a woman looking for an apology. I was an officer looking at a balance sheet. "The apartment on Forsyth Street," I said. "I have the lease. I have your name on it. I have the payment history traced to our joint account. I have 14 months of emails confirming the nature of the arrangement." He went completely still. In interrogation training, they teach you that the most powerful thing you can say after delivering key evidence is nothing. You say nothing. You let the silence do the work. You let it expand until it fills every corner of the room, and the other person can no longer breathe without making a sound. I let the silence work. "Claire," he finally said. His voice was a wreck. A performance looking for an audience that had already left. "I can explain." "I am not here for the explanation," I said. "I am here for the paperwork." I reached into the folder on the chair beside me. I placed 3 documents on the table. The first was the petition for divorce. The second was a notarized accounting of the marital assets, including every withdrawal from the joint account traced to his secondary life. The third was a letter from my JAG attorney, Dana, outlining the criminal exposure for wire fraud, financial exploitation of a military spouse, and misappropriation of funds under the Servicemembers Civil Relief Act. I watched him read the third document. I watched the performance collapse entirely. There was no charm left. No tears. No smooth voice with the right words in the right order. There was just a man staring at the legal consequence of the decision he had been making for over a year. "You should call a lawyer," I said. I stood up, picked up my folder. "You should do that tonight." I walked out of the kitchen. I walked out of the house. The door clicked shut behind me. Soft. Precise. Final. The next 6 weeks were not emotional. They were operational. Dana filed the divorce petition within 48 hours. Because of the documented financial misconduct, the misappropriation of military pay, the fraudulent accounting entries in the joint account, we were not starting from a place of equal division. We were starting from a place of evidence. Marcus hired a lawyer. A good one. A man in a glass office downtown who wore cufflinks and charged $400 an hour to tell people what they wanted to hear. It did not matter. Dana did not deal in what people wanted to hear. She dealt in what the paper said. The paper said a great deal. The joint account had received $118,000 of my military income over 14 months. Of that, $43,700 was traceable to expenditures Marcus made for the maintenance of his secondary relationship. The apartment, the trips, the gifts, the dinners. Under Georgia law, marital misconduct is admissible in equitable distribution proceedings. Under the Servicemembers Civil Relief Act, misuse of a military spouse's pay carries additional civil penalties. Marcus's lawyer opened with a settlement offer. He proposed we split the joint account down the middle, sell the house, and walk away. Dana's response was 3 words. "We'll see you in court." Marcus's lawyer came back 2 days later. The second offer was better. Dana's response was still 3 words. I want to pause here because I know some of you are wondering, why not just walk away? Why not take the settlement, take the money, and be done with it? Because walking away quietly was not an option. Not because I wanted revenge for its own sake, but because men like Marcus depend on the silence of the women they hurt. They count on exhaustion. They count on the fact that most people, when faced with the ugliness of a public legal fight, choose the quiet exit. I had spent 7 months in a country where the quiet exit got people killed. I was not taking the quiet exit. If you have ever been told to just let it go by someone who never had to live with what was done to you, hit that like button right now. And subscribe, because the settlement Dana finally got him to sign is not something I want you to miss. Marcus Devlin Mercer signed the final divorce agreement on a Tuesday morning in November. I was not in the room when he signed. I was at Fort Bragg in a briefing about my next assignment. I was drinking black coffee from a paper cup and listening to a colonel outline a logistics challenge in Eastern Europe. Dana texted me at 0934. 3 words. He signed everything. I put my phone face down on the conference table. I looked at the map on the wall. All those coordinates. All those lines drawn in careful ink across complicated terrain. I thought about the house in Savannah, the one that smelled like another woman's shampoo. The house I had bought and never lived in. Under the terms of the agreement, that house was now sold. The proceeds went into an account that existed solely in my name. The joint savings account was liquidated. After the legal accounting of the misappropriated funds, Marcus left with what had been his to begin with, which was significantly less than he had arrived with. The credit card debt he had accumulated, the card I had been a secondary holder on but had never used, that was his. All of it. He had to liquidate his personal investment accounts to cover the penalty assessment from the SCRA filing. He did not lose his career. I had not asked for that. But he lost the financial infrastructure he had built on the foundation of my absence. Every comfortable thing he had arranged while I was counting mortar rounds in East Africa, it was dismantled item by item, dollar by dollar, with the cold efficiency of someone who had been trained to move through chaos without flinching. Justine, for what it is worth, was not a part of the legal proceedings. She was a civilian who made her own choices. What happened to her relationship with Marcus after the documents were signed was not my concern. My concern was the grid. My concern was the account number, the settlement figure, the clean line between what had been stolen and what had been returned. My concern was standing on the other side of it. I was reassigned to a NATO advisory post in Stuttgart, Germany, for months after the divorce was finalized. The apartment they gave me was small. It was bare. It smelled like fresh paint and old radiators. There were no curtains when I arrived, and the winter light came through the windows like a cold interrogation lamp. I liked it immediately. I went to the base commissary and bought a set of plain white curtains, a coffee maker, and 3 books. I set them up with the same precision I used to set up an operations center. Everything in its place. everything serving a purpose. There was a shelf above the desk. I put one thing on it: my military ID, my new apartment key, and a photograph, the only photograph I had taken on the morning I signed the divorce papers. Not of myself. Of the fountain outside Dana's office building in Savannah. It was a cold morning. The water was still running. The surface was perfectly flat. Still. Clear. Moving beneath the surface in a way you could not see from a distance. That was what I was now. I do not think about Marcus often. When I do, it is not with anger. Anger is a fire that requires fuel. I stopped feeding it the day I walked out of the house on Forsyth Street. What I think about is the lesson. I had been trained my entire career to assess risk before committing assets, to verify before trusting, to document everything, because in a war zone, the paper is all that survives when everything else burns. I had applied that rigor to every corner of my professional life and none of it to my marriage. That was not weakness. It was faith. And faith in the wrong person is an unguarded perimeter. I have a different perimeter now. It has better fencing. There is a thing that happens to people after a betrayal. A specific kind of recalibration. The world looks the same. The light comes through the same windows. The coffee tastes the same. But something behind your eyes has shifted. You stop reading people at face value and you start reading the pattern behind the words. The gap between what someone says and what they do. The distance between their performance and their ledger. Marcus thought my deployment was a window. He was right. It was a window. But he miscalculated who was looking through it. I looked through it and I saw exactly what he was. The brass pen Dana used to sign the final filing is on my desk in Stuttgart. She mailed it to me the week after. No note. Just the pen. I keep it next to my coffee cup every morning. I do not use it for anything except to remember that documents are final. That evidence is permanent. That the truth, no matter how long it takes, is a better weapon than anything you can throw across a kitchen table in a moment of rage. Major Claire Mercer is not a woman who throws things. She is a woman who files them. Unbroken. Documented. Free. If this story hit something in you, if you have ever come home to a different life than the one you left, I want to hear from you. Drop your story in the comments. Even one line. You do not owe anyone the full chapter. Hit the like button if you believe that the truth, handled with discipline, is always the most powerful move in the room. And subscribe to Noble Revenge, because next week, we have a story about a woman who discovered her business partner had been siphoning her company for 3 years while she was caring for a sick parent. She did not confront him at his desk. She bought him out. You will not want to miss it. This is Noble Revenge. Silence ends here.